Poor Generation X. Any Gen Xers in the house today? Make a little bit of noise, Gen X. This is your part of the speech. We're going to give you a trophy for attending today and make you feel special. I've been told that this is a therapy session for Gen X managers, so I hope you appreciate that as well. But this was the last generation to play by those old rules. You had to do it the old way. You paid your dues, you kept your head down, you showed up early, you stayed late, and you didn't have the millennial childhood like I did, with somebody looking over your shoulder 24/7, 365. I'm guessing that the Gen Xers, you had a much more independent childhood. Your average summer day, probably literally kicked out the screen door, told to go off and play, and you weren't supposed to come home until when? Until it got dark or the street lights came on. Maybe your hometown didn't have street lights, that's okay. But you were the last generation of American kids to go off and play without any grown-ups around. And that might just seem like nostalgia. But there's more to it than just nostalgia, because think about what was happening to you on those independent summer days. You were literally learning how to raise yourself. Some of the Gen Xers I've worked with joked the adults were never there. It was just us. Well, that means that by the time you turn 25, you're going to be much more resilient and self-reliant because you didn't have an army of adults to bail you out of every jam you got into. I'm guessing when you were out there with just your friends, occasionally you made a few bad decisions, right? Maybe more than a few, depending on who our friends were. But get this, you actually had to face the consequences of your actions. Pretty novel concept to the millennial who's always had extra credit in school or a helicopter parent to bring me my essay assignment that I left on the breakfast table. We're not used to facing consequences, but Gen X was, and they were the last generation through the door of doing it the old way.